so we're going to talk about today the listing presentation. And specifically, the first part of this really is actually just going to be about presenting in general. But so I apologize because I'm just going to stare at you the whole time because I got no one else to look at but you. So
it's my own personal meeting.
That's right. With a few people watching.
Yeah, with a few people observing. Yeah.
Yeah, we're here. I mean, come on.
So hang on, say that again, Rebecca. I had the sound too low.
I said, yeah, we're here.
Yeah.
I know, but I can't see you.
You got 6 people online.
I know, but you guys, I can't see you. You've all turned your cameras off, so not that I'm looking anyway, but anyway, so feel free to participate. All right, here we go. So there are 2 parts to a listing presentation. So we're going to talk today about the listing presentation. This first part, I'm going to give you 6 things that have to happen as part of a listing presentation. But technically they have to happen as part of any presentation that you're going to do. But before we get to that, so let me back up for a minute. One of the things that I would say that separates us at Everest from other companies will do trainings and even some have decent things that they will train on. But what I will tell you, probably the biggest difference that I noticed in I think it's been 6 years now. 5 or 6 years. I can't remember if it's 5 or 6. 6 years in June that I've been with Everest. When I got here, the thing that I noticed that was the biggest difference was the amount of time that we talk about leadership, and that your job in real estate is to be a leader. And in fact, actually, before you guys even had jumped on, Caitlin and I were talking about a deal that she's got going, where really at the end of the day, what we were just talking about is you leading them and you doing all of those things to lead them to getting this transaction to take place. So really what our job is about leadership, okay? So so keep that in mind as kind of the envelope that everything we're going to talk about is contained within. So there's 2 parts to a listing presentation. The first part is about getting them to choose you, or I'm going to put it as choose me. But the first thing that we've got to do in a listing presentation is we've got to get them to choose us. Then after that, we can talk to them about what we're going to do as far as the market and price goes. Okay? So there's 2 parts to it. So think of it this way, specifically on a listing presentation. But again, really the 6 things we're going to talk about first apply to any presentation. But today we're talking mostly listing presentation. The first thing that has to happen is you got to get them to choose you. If they have not chosen you, then really the price doesn't matter. What you're going to do to get the home sold doesn't matter. The most important thing that's got to happen first is that I've got to get them to choose me. Once they have chosen me, then we can work on what are we going to do to get the home sold and what are we going to do in terms of how are we going to price the home. But all that stuff really doesn't matter. Now, with that being said, though, if you stop and think about it for a minute from the standpoint of the consumer, in their mind, we're no different. In fact, even just what we were talking about with a lender, in their mind, if somebody says they can get them a better interest rate, then they feel like, well, I should go over there. Even though it may be a bait and switch and last minute, all of a sudden we can't get that rate and it's a higher rate and it's going to cost you more money and all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, any of that stuff, the pricing stuff doesn't matter if they haven't chosen you. So your first objective is always going to be to get them to choose you. Now, with that being said, if you're working for sale by owners or even expired listings, if you're working for sale by owner and expired listing, in their mind, it's I got to find the person who's going to be the cheapest, because again, especially for sale by owner, is that's what they're trying to do is save the commission. So they don't stop to think about all of the other pieces in terms of who are they going to choose. So with that being said, usually the first question they're going to ask you is, well, what's your commission? Because in their mind, there's no difference between us and anyone else except for the price that we're going to charge them. So therefore, I need to find the cheapest price. So keep in mind, the first thing that you've got to do is get them to choose you. Well, how do we do that? There's 6 things that have to happen for you to know that they have.
computer that has it or something?
So she turned her video on now. All right, here we go. So I can see you now, Rebecca. But I did mute you because I could hear the background noise. All right, so there's 6 things that have to happen. The first thing that has to happen in order for them to choose me. Now, and in fact, actually, let me even go back for 1 second. If you're on the phone talking to somebody for sale by owner and expired, and they asked you, what's your commission? Based on what I'm telling you here is you should not talk about price until they have chosen you. So if I'm on the phone prospecting and I get on it with the for sale by owner and they were to say to me, well, what's your commission? How should I respond to that? No pressure here.
No pressure.
Somebody on Zoom can unmute and answer as well. But because here's what I'm saying is don't talk price.
Mhm.
So if I'm on with the for sale by owner who then says, well, what's your commission you're going to charge me? I'm telling you until they've chosen you, don't tell them a price.
That's something I'd love to go over with you when we meet in person, or, you know,
Perfect. Good.
something like that.
That's right. So one of the things that is good to say is that'll be one of the first things we talk about when I get out there is that.
Yeah.
Or the other way that I'll handle it is I will sometimes say, you know, that's the very reason we need to get together is because I need to first hear what it is you want to accomplish. Then we can tailor what I'm going to do to meet what it is you want to accomplish. And we will come together on and agree to the price or the commission that we're going to charge. That way, I'm saying to them, you don't have to worry, we're going to come to an agreement on it. But before we come to that, I need to come out and meet with you so that I can hear what it is you're wanting to accomplish. I can walk you through the process and we can work together towards that. So now, if they press further, well, that's great, but give me an idea what your commission is going to be. At least give me a ballpark. So for me, then what I like to do is give them a range. I usually will say to them, could be as low as 0. Might be that I don't charge you anything, but it could be as high as sometimes I'll say 10%, but truthfully, the highest I've ever charged is 8. So I usually will say it could be as low as 0, but might be as high as an 8%. But either way, whatever it's going to be, we will come to an agreement on it and you'll be happy with it. And so will I. So you don't have to worry about, is it going to be 0 or is it going to be 8? We'll figure that out, what's going to work best. So I've typically found by approaching it that way kind of gives them the confidence at least, okay, then yeah, let's meet and let's talk. Okay. So just keep in mind when I say don't talk price until they've chosen you, that means don't talk price till they've chosen you. Now, even if I've said to them, hey, that'll be one of the first things we talk about when I come out is what's the commission going to be? Even if I've said that to them, when I get out there, if they tried to press me on the price, I'm going to say, you know, as I mentioned before, I need to ask you a few questions. I got to find out exactly what you want to accomplish. We're going to figure out what the best way to approach this is going to be. And then from there, we'll land on the price. So then we can jump into it. All right. So the first thing that's got to happen in order for them to choose me is there has to be a connection so I'm going to write it as connect or / rapport built. Okay. There's got to be some connection or rapport. And now of everything that we're going to talk about in terms of a presentation that you're going to do, a listing presentation, the most important thing is the connection and rapport. Meaning if you fail on the other pieces, but you can have them you can be in rapport with them and have a connection with them, you are going to be better off than if you don't have that and you have the other pieces in place. Now, that leads to the second piece of this. The next thing that has to happen in order for someone to choose you. So first, it's got to be some connection and rapport. Now, when we talk about connection and rapport, what I don't mean by connection and rapport is that they have a cat and you sit and tell them how much you love cats. Like that's not what we mean by connection and rapport. But basically of them feeling like that you understand, you're concerned, you're looking out for their best interest, which is then going to lead to number 2 on this. Number 2 is that they have to have some trust in you. They have to feel like they can trust you. So that's what I mean by getting the connection and rapport is creating that then also creates the trust, which again, tying this back to what we said in the beginning, your job is to lead them. If my job is to lead them, I first have to get into some rapport with them and have them trust me. Once they trust me, they will then allow me to lead them. Okay, so that leads to number 3. So the third thing that has to happen on every single presentation that we do is that they then also have to feel safe. Now, those are somewhat related, but different in that because they trust me, because there's the connection and rapport, because they feel like they can trust me, they now feel safe, which will then allow me to then lead them. Once those things have happened, we're on our way to them now having chosen me. And for me, I always like to say, stop and think about the times when like you bought a car or even at a department store and you were talking to somebody. Anytime you have worked with somebody in kind of a sales experience, typically it is the people that you feel this with, the connection and rapport, you trust them, you feel safe, are the ones that we want to work with. Like for me, I think about a number of different times that I've gone out looking for a car and I get there and I just feel like slimy when you're around the salesperson. Like that is somebody I'm not going to work with. Therefore, I don't really care. So to tie this together, I don't care what price they were going to tell me on the car. I don't trust them. I don't feel safe. Therefore, I'm not going to believe whatever they said anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. So you got to have this connection and rapport. We have to then be able to have them feel like they can trust us, which then allows them to feel safe. All right. So now that leads us to number 4 then. The fourth thing that has to happen on this presentation. Now, I'm going to show you as we go through the listing presentation where each of these things fits in so that you can see how the process we're doing our listing presentation is designed around creating all of this stuff to take place. So number 4 then is we have to create value. Okay. So the fourth thing that has to happen is now that we're in some rapport, they trust me, they feel safe, I then now need to create value. Because even though they may trust me and feel safe and there's this rapport, they still may feel like, well, yeah, but yeah, I like you, but I still want the cheapest commission. So what does it matter? Therefore, number 4, I've got to create some value. I've got to have something that has them see the value in it. The example I like to use on this is if you stop and think about a car and driving the type of car that you drive. We all aren't running around in, I'm always hesitant to say a brand of car because it'll offend somebody. So I'll say a Yugo. Do you remember what a Yugo was?
No.
Do you ever know what it was? Any of you guys on Zoom know what a Yugo was?
No.
Nope.
Good, I can choose a Yugo then. So a Yugo, basically, this was a car when I was a kid that, and really there weren't many of I didn't see many of these, but I just remember I had a friend that lived on a farm and there was another house on this farm that he lived on that when we would drive down this lane to get to his house, there was this old car sitting there. And I remembered asking him one day, like, what is that car? And he's like, oh, it's a Yugo. And basically what it was a car with a 3-cylinder engine. And so it was basically a lawnmower engine that drove a car around. So anyway, here's the point. Why are we not all driving the most economical, cheapest vehicle that we could find out there? And then maybe that's what I had to do for the next class is go see what's the cheapest new car you could buy today. And anybody have any ideas? Somebody throw out a name of one.
No idea.
Yeah,
A Fiat?
maybe. I don't know. They're small thing like 12.
Sounds
grand.
good to me. Why are we not all driving a Fiat then?
Because it's not one size fits all. It's not going to maybe be reliable. It might have issues once things are going. There might be extra costs later on because you're not investing upfront with it. You know, it's just, you're going to pay for what you get.
Okay, good.
Essentially.
Yeah. So, and so for me, I go from there to, okay, so why would somebody go spend $100,000 on a vehicle when you could go and spend, I don't know, $20,000? Why would anybody ever spend 100? And ultimately it's because
They see value.
they see the value. See, the reason you will go out and do that. So here's the thing to keep in mind. I was talking to my wife one day and somehow we were talking about for sale by owners. And she said, if you weren't an agent and we were going to sell our house, I would want to try it for sale by owner first. And I was like, what? Like, obviously you don't get it then. But so here's the point is, if we don't see the value, if they don't see the value in it, they're not going to pay. But if they do, they will. Meaning the reason somebody will go spend $100,000 on a car is because they see the value of, yeah, it does the same thing. Meaning I could go spend $20,000 on the car that, and it'll get me from here to California. It would do it.
Yep.
But I would enjoy it better on the 100,000, and going to what you said, maybe it's more reliable.
Might not get there as quick as you want to.
Might not be as fast, all of those kinds of things. Or, and I love actually the way you said it before, was sometimes spending, in fact, I have a sister-in-law that applies to exactly what I'm about to say. When it comes to buying vehicles, cell phones, stuff like that, she always wants to buy the cheapest, yet on vehicles, I see they go buy the vehicle, they buy the very cheapest one that they can find. It's constantly breaking down, so they're spending money to get it. Then they get so frustrated with the vehicle that they go trade it in for the next cheapest one that they can find. But now they're upside down on it because they owed still more than the car was worth, so they tack that onto the next one, where they're constantly in this cycle of buying pieces of junk cars and consistently, like I finally even had said, you guys should just go and lease, because you constantly have a car, like, well, I don't want a car payment. Well, I get that, but you've had one for their whole marriage, which is probably 20 years now. And I'm like, you might as well go lease, so you're spending the less than you currently, anyway. Totally. If we see the value, we'll spend the money. If we don't see the value, we won't do it. The reason we'll go spend money on cars. So we have to get the client to see the value that we bring in order for them to be willing to pay the commission. All right, number 5. The next one is, and this is related to then, well, so how do we do that? How do we then create the value? Well, we do that by separating. So separate yourself is the next thing that we have to do. So the way that we're going to get people to be willing to pay us a commission and pay us a full commission is we got to create the value, and we have to separate ourselves from the competition. So what you'll see and what you'll notice as we go through this listing presentation is I'm going to continually talk about, here's what most agents do, but here's what I do. So how you're going to separate yourself from the competition is by constantly saying, this is what most agents do, but here's what I do. Here's how most agents are going to handle it. Here's what I do. So I'll give you a quick example. Now I'll just wait until we get there. Then I'll give you an example. All right, number 6. The last thing that has to happen for them to choose me is then I have to close. So I got to ask. Now, here's the good news. If you've done the other 5 things, the close is easy. That's the thing. That's where, if you stop and think about it, the natural ending to a good presentation should be the close. And actually, if I've done this right, if I've created the value, separated myself, the closing actually hopefully is them just saying, okay, so what do we need to do now? What's our next step? You know, how do we get started on making this take place? All right, so keep in mind, that's where we're headed to in what we're doing, okay? So I'm gonna actually, let me just shorten this up here. I'm just gonna put price here. All right, so now let's go through and talk about how do we do it? How do we make this all take place? And let me see. All right, perfect. So number 1, the first thing that's going to happen on a listing presentation is we use an acronym for this, and it's called TAP, T-A-P. TAP is an acronym that stands for, we need to thank, acknowledge, and promise. Okay, so we want to thank, acknowledge, and promise. So when we go out on a listing presentation, the first thing we want to do when we get there is we want to thank, acknowledge, and promise. Now, for me, here's the other thing that I would say. So let me even back up from the thank, acknowledge, and promise, even though I'm not going to write it down. But when you get there on a listing presentation, one of the things that I like to do is pull up and get there a few minutes early. Now, I don't know if you guys are like I am, but if I had somebody coming over, if I wasn't an agent and I had somebody coming over to my house, or for example, when I have, I don't know, I was trying to think of an example. I had a financial planner coming over to the house. And I remember before he came, like kind of hanging out there by the front window, looking out the window to see like, is he here yet? You know, Well, most people, I would say, are typically going to be a little bit anxious about this whole thing. And so for me, what I like to do is I like to show up and be there a couple minutes early. When I get there, I will get out of the car, and then I like to even just have potentially a clipboard with the MLS printout of a previous one from their house, or the data input sheet that I'm going to fill out for their house. I like to have that with me. And then when I get out of the car, I'll even kind of just stand there and kind of either take some notes or at least make it look like I'm taking some notes. But typically I'm going to take some notes on like, what does the curb appeal look like? How's the roof? Something like that. Now, part of why I like to do that is because it kind of sets the stage for I'm here and I've already started. Like if they're looking out the window, which they may or may not be, but if they're looking out the window and they see me get out of the car and I'm kind of looking at the house and taking a few notes, it kind of sets the, oh, all right, it's already happening. So once I get there, though, so I knock on the door, they open the door. You want to thank, acknowledge, and promise. So I want to thank them for taking the time to meet with me. I want to acknowledge something about the house. Now, that's going to mean more if I've done what I just said to you. If I've gotten out of the car and I've taken a couple of notes, when I acknowledge them, if they were looking out the window, seeing that I did that I was taking some notes, then what's going to happen is they're going to appreciate, hey, how you doing?
Good.
Caitlin is so glad to see you here.
Come sit up here.
I'm so sorry.
You're good.
No, you're totally fine.
Have a seat.
Keep getting lost.
All right, so I'm going to acknowledge them, and what I want to acknowledge is something about the house ideally. So ideally, it's something about the house. Now, so if I have stopped and I've taken some notes, like I said, where I've looked at the curb appeal or I've looked to see what their flowers or whatever look like, then what I can do is I'm able to then, it's going to mean more to them when I acknowledge it because they saw that I really was looking at it. So if I've stopped and looked at the house for a minute and I notice this flower bed that looks great or whatever, I'm going to knock on the door. They open the door. I'm going to, they're going to say, come on in. I'm going to say, thanks for having me over. Wow, I was noticing your flower bed as I walked in. Or I'm going to say, wow, the curb appeal on your home is going to look so great when we put it on the market. So I'm going to also, tying it back to this, I'm going to do a little bit of a close even on them right out of the gate with this acknowledge. So by me saying to them, hey, thanks for having me come over. Wow, I noticed the curb appeal when I pulled up to the front of your house and just how beautiful it is. That flower bed that you've got is going to look amazing when we have the photographer come out and take pictures for your home. So I'm acknowledging them. I'm making them feel good about, hey, you've done a great job. But I'm also then even somewhat kind of setting the stage a little bit for, I'm here to list your home by acknowledging that, that flower bed, when we take the pictures for the exterior, put on the MLS, is going to be something that's going to attract the people to your house, something like that. I want to acknowledge. Now, what if though I get there and the house is just junk and it's a flip? I'm probably not going to, oh, wow, you've done such a phenomenal job of destroying this place, So what would I acknowledge?
Do you say, I see so much potential in the property?
Okay,
or-
good. Yeah, could do that.
Yeah,
Good. The other thing, if there's nothing, if you feel like there's just nothing to say,
Yeah.
then just acknowledge their time. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time. Like, I know everybody today is busy and you probably have other things that, you've got to take care of, but I just appreciate you carving out some time to meet with me. Okay. So
Well, you could also say, without, or this really needs to tap into some investors, which I am connected to and things. So I think an expansive marketing plan is really going to be to your benefit. I can't wait to go through it.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just find something you can acknowledge them about that is hopefully going to make them feel appreciated is basically what it is. And then the final piece of this on the tap is the promise. So I want to give them some type of a promise. And so for me, typically what it's going to look like is this. So Caitlin, thanks for letting me come over. Wow, you've done a great job. Your curb appeal is amazing on the house. I love those flowers. That flower bed is that you that has the green thumb or your husband or whatever? I'm just going to ask these questions. Then I'm going to just say, I promise you that we're gonna, you're gonna find the time we spend together valuable. I'm gonna give you some really good information. Whether or not we end up working together, I'm gonna give you some good information. So I want to thank, acknowledge, and promise them, okay, is what I want to do. Now, the next piece of this, so I usually like to just draw a line across here, because it's not really number 2, but it kind of is. So it's kind of a segue. Maybe I should draw it as a bridge. I don't know. But the next thing that I'm going to do is, after I've thanked, acknowledged, and promised, is the next thing is to look at the property. So now that I have thanked, acknowledged, and promised, the next thing that I want to do is I want to go take a look at the home. Now, there's 2 ways you can go about doing this. One is you can do it just you, or 2 is with them, okay? So I'm gonna go look at the property, and I'm either gonna do it just me, or I'm gonna have them show me through. So now there's not a right answer as to, do you say, let me go out and let me take a look at the home, or saying, show me around and, point out stuff about the house. Let me tell you how I decide, because I will go both ways, meaning that sometimes I will say, I just want to look at it. Sometimes I will say, I want them to show it to me. How I'm going to decide is one of 2 things. If I feel like, and remember, the first thing that's got to happen on the presentation is I got to get them to choose me. And in order to do that, there's got to be some connection and rapport. If I don't feel like I have that, I'm going to have them show me the property, because it gives me a chance to create that connection and rapport, and to be, oh, wow, that's amazing. Who did that? Oh, geez, you've done such a great job with that. So I'm going to use the looking at the property as a way to build connection and rapport, having them show it to me if I need that. If I feel like the connection and rapport is there, I probably am just going to look at it myself. Now, here's why. If you look at it by yourself, and the way I will do that is I will say to them, I want to go discover your property through the eyes of a buyer. So I don't want you to show me around, because when we have a buyer come through, you're not going to be there to show them around. So I want to go discover it the way that they're going to. That's how I will do it if I want it to be just me. And I will do that if the connection and rapport is there. And if I feel like I need to, like if I've got another appointment after that I need to get to, so that I want to keep control of the time, then I'm going to have just me look at the property. If I'm not worried about that and I need that connection and rapport, then I'm going to have them show it to me. Does that make sense? So if they show me through, they're going to point out every little thing that may or may not matter. Versus if I feel like, hey, I've got the connection and rapport that I need, I'm not worried about that, and I've got to get onto another appointment, I'm just going to say, hey, I want to go discover it through the eyes of the buyer. Therefore, I can walk through the house and be done in a couple of minutes. Versus if they show me through, they're going to want to tell me about little Johnny's trophy and the blah, blah, whatever, and the kid that, let me tell you about this mark we got here on this wall, and how, what happened was that, which is great if you need to get the connection and rapport. But if not, I don't want it. I want to just cruise through the property. So you're going to decide. There's not a right answer. Do you have them show you or not? You decide on what that's going to look like. All right, number 2. Number 2 is what I will like to refer to it as the game plan. Okay. So number 2 is the game plan. Now, the game plan is going to be just giving an overview. So if I would have started the class today, and this won't be as applicable to the people on Zoom, but if I had started the class today and said to you guys, all right, at some point, they're going to open the door and tell us the bus is here, and we're going to go run down and we're going to go get on a bus. What's going on? If I had started it, what would be going on in your mind at that moment when I say, okay, at some point a bus is going to show up, they're going to open the door and tell me, hey, the bus is here, we're all going to go get on the bus. What's the first question you want to ask me?
Why?
That's right. Where are we going? Why are we doing this? Right? So think of this game plan as being that same thing. After I've thanked, acknowledged, and promised, I've gone and looked at the property. They kind of want to know, what's this meeting going to look like? And so the next piece of this, the second part of this process, is for me to outline for them, this is what it's going to look like. This is what we're going to do. Okay. So let me show you what that looks like. So there's 4 things that I want to outline for them, that I'm going to tell them basically is the game plan, okay? So again, keep in mind, I'm not actually doing these 4 things right now. I'm just going to give them an overview. Think of it this way. No different than at the start of the class of me saying to you guys, all right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the listing presentation today. We're going to specifically focus on that, but I'm also going to give you 6 things that are relative to any presentation. See, we didn't do it. I just told you what we were going to do. Then we started to do it. That's what this is, okay? So I'm giving them an overview of here's what we're going to do. So the first thing that we're going to do that I'm going to work on with them, or that we're going to talk about, and I'll give you kind of the language that I use to explain this here in a second. But the first thing that we're going to do is basically talk, started to write down the wrong thing here. First thing that we're going to talk about is their needs, their wants, and expectations. Now, the way that I'm going to do that is through, which is why I started to write the Q, is through questions. Okay, so I'm going to ask them some questions. So here's how I say it to them: is I would be saying, okay, Caitlin, wow, love what you've done to the home. I looked at it. So let me give you kind of an overview of what we're going to talk about. The first thing that I want to do is spend some time asking you some questions that will help me to know what your needs, your wants, and ultimately what you would expect from me as an agent. And I'll share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. So that's what this first thing is. I'm telling them, first thing we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a number of questions that are going to help me understand your needs, your wants, and your expectations. Then number 2, after we have talked about their needs, wants, and expectations, then I'm going to share with them what separates me. So let me pause for a minute on this and come back to over here. Remember I said we got to get the connection, rapport, the trust, and have them feel safe. All of that's going to take place during number 1. Hopefully it's been happening all along. But the idea of number 1 is twofold. Is these needs, wants, and expectation is to create the connection and rapport, have them trust me, and to feel safe with what we're going to be talking about is where I'm going to do with that. So number 2 then is going to be about creating value and separating yourself. So number 2 is going to be, I sometimes will write it down as a plan of action is what number 2 is going to be. Or I'm going to put it in here as separate yourself. Okay. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to be saying, so Caitlin, first thing I'm going to do is ask you a number of questions that's going to help me understand what your needs, your wants, and ultimately what you would expect from me as an agent. Then after that, I'm going to show you what do I do to get a home sold? What's that process look like? And what makes me different than everybody else that's out there? So see, again, this is just, I'm telling them this, we haven't done it yet. I'm just saying the first thing we're going to do is this. Then after we've done that, then I'm going to show you what makes me different. What makes me different than every other agent out there? Why are we not all the same? That's what this is going to be, okay? Then number 3 is where we were going to then talk about the market / price. Now, remember what I already told you over here. We're not going to do that until they've chosen me. So during 1 and number 2 is where I've got to get them to feel safe with me, to trust me, to have that rapport, and me to be able to create some value and separate myself before we're going to do that. And I'll show you what that transition looks like. And then number 4 is then we're going to close. Okay, so now let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to say, so if I'm out at Caitlin's house, so I'm going to say, thanks for having me come out. Wow, you've done a really good job on the exterior of the home. It looks awesome. It's going to look amazing when I have the photographer come out and take pictures for the MLS. I promise you, I'm going to give you some really good information. Whether or not we end up working together is irrelevant. I'm going to give you some really good information that's going to help you make the right decision for you, whether to sell or not sell. Now, let me go take a look at your home, Caitlin, and I want to discover it through the eyes of a buyer. So I want to walk through and take a look at it. And then do you want to be here in the kitchen, or would you rather be in the living room or whatever? And I'm going to say, so let me walk through the house. So I go walk through the house. I come back and I'm going to go, wow, you've done a great job. I can see where this home is going to show really well when we put it on the market. Now, let me kind of give you an overview of what we're gonna do is first thing I want to do is I'm gonna ask you a whole bunch of questions that's gonna help me understand what's important to you and what your needs are, what your wants, and ultimately your expectations will be of me. And then I'll also share with you what I would expect from you as a seller. Then after that, we'll talk about, so what am I gonna do to get the home sold? What makes me different than every other agent out there? And why wouldn't you just go pick somebody else off the street versus actually choosing me to help you in getting your home sold? After we've done that, then Caitlin, what we're gonna then talk about is, so what are we gonna do in terms of getting the home sold and what price should it be? Meaning, we're gonna talk about what's going on in the market today and how that's gonna affect the price for you on your home. And then after that, if you're comfortable and confident with everything we've talked about, I'm just gonna ask you to sign some paperwork so that we can get started, okay?
Great.
So that's how they're gonna answer too. Now let me show you what I just did. I've told them in different words, I'm gonna find out what's important to you so that we can have that connection and the rapport. Hopefully you'll start to trust me and feel safe. I'm also then gonna show you what I do that makes me different than everybody else, that's gonna create some value. And then I've even actually closed. So I've closed by saying, after we've talked about all that stuff, if you're comfortable and confident with everything we've talked about, then I'm gonna ask you to just sign some paperwork so we can get started, okay? And I always stop it that way, okay? Because then what did she say? Great, which in essence is awesome, that's perfect. Then, so now, the next piece of this then is number 3. Number 3 is going to be this. So let me show you, so let me just do this. We'll draw a line here, up here from number 3 is the needs, wants, and expectations. Okay, so number 3 now is going to be the questions. I'm going to ask questions of them. And the idea of these questions is going to be designed around getting their needs, wants, and expectations. Okay, now, if you had to take a test, if we were putting a test together, and maybe we should even go back to when you took the real estate exam, if you had the option, now keeping in mind you had to get 70% in order to pass, if they had given you the option of, hey, you can have your book there and all your notes you've ever taken to take the exam, or you can't have any of that stuff, you just have to take the exam, which would you choose? Open book or closed?
Open book.
Yeah, now, there's always somebody, let's see if nobody typed any notes. There's always, typically it's every class, there's somebody who's like, I want to do a closed book because I want to see if I really learned the information. Okay, good for you. But typically, you're gonna do better on a test if you had your notes in the open book there, right? Think of this as that, okay? Part of the objective of you going on a listing presentation is to get them to choose you. If you could know what is gonna be important and what's gonna be the deciding factor for them, would you wanna know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, hopefully the answer is always yes to that. And so that's the idea of this. Think of it this way. Think of it as these questions, this area where we're going to ask questions is all the answers are there. And they're willing to give you all the answers, but you got to ask the right question. So think of it kind of like the game of Jeopardy, where the answers are on the board and you have to come up with the right question. That's what we're doing here, is this needs, wants, and expectation is all about you asking the questions in such a way for you to discover how they're going to make the choice of who they're going to list their property with. And it's all a matter of, if you can ask the right questions, you'll uncover what's going to be important for them. So now let me give you an example of that. And I think I might have shared this with you guys a couple of weeks ago when I did the needs analysis. I don't remember for sure if I did or not, but we had the best example on this is, in fact, I went to lunch with the guy and I asked him about where the property was. And I guess it was in Oakland. It wasn't in Southern California like I think I typically say it is in the story. But what happened was, this agent had an opportunity to go out on this listing presentation. And having learned this stuff that we're talking about, the importance of discovering needs, wants, and expectations, went on this listing presentation and they asked this seller, this lady was in her 80s. The home was worth, I want to say $15 million, and this is 20 years ago. The home's worth $15 million, and she's now ready to sell it. Her husband's passed away, and she wants to sell the property. The agent goes out there and she says, I have been contacted by all these agents. Every agent out there knows that I'm selling my property. They want to do it. I've interviewed a number of agents. You're the fourth or the fifth one, I don't remember what it was, that she was interviewing. And he said, great, can I just ask you some questions? Ask the questions to discover what really was most important to them. See, that's the idea of this, is we need to ask the questions to figure out what is their deciding factor. What is it that is going to push them over the edge of, you're the agent that I want to list with? Well, so he asked the questions and asked her, what is your concern? Like, what's your biggest fear in getting your home sold? And this lady said, well, I've had all these other agents come out. And I don't know if you noticed in the one room, the white carpet. And he said, yeah, I noticed, it was beautiful. And she said, that was a present from my husband. Had it handmade in Peru or something like that, this carpet, $100,000 spent on this carpet. And she said it was a present. And every agent that has come to talk to me has talked to me about how many people they're going to put it on their office tour. They're going to put it on a board tour. They're going to get all these people walking through it. She said, I just sat there the whole time picturing my white carpet being destroyed before I even moved. See, that's typically what we're looking for in this, is typically there's something that person is looking for in an agent. And if you can get them to tell you what it is, based upon you asking the right questions, you'll discover what that is. And then on this plan of action, you can then present to them, here's what I'm going to do. So let me tell you what this agent did. She said, I just picture this carpet being destroyed. So the agent said this under the plan of action section. Well, here's what we're going to do is I'm not going to put it on an office tour. I won't put it on a board tour. I will the only people who are going to walk through your house, we're going to make sure they are approved buyers, meaning that they can even afford to buy your house. Because you know as well as I do, there are people out there that if they see a $15 million house for sale would call an agent and go, hey, I want to go see that property, just because they want to go see what the inside of that $15 million house looks like. So the agent said, we're going to make people give us either a pre-approval letter or a proof of funds letter, or they're not walking through the house. Then I'm going to go down to the medical supply store. I'm going to buy a box of booties, and everybody that comes through, we're going to have them slip on over their shoes to walk through the house so that we can protect your carpet. Guess who she chose to list her home? Yeah. So that's the idea of this. So as I talk to you about this questions piece, that's what we want to do, is we want to ask the questions that are designed around finding out what's most important. So I'll give you a few ideas. So, but before I give you the ideas, actually, let me tie this to the needs analysis class that we did a few weeks ago. These questions should always start with something like this. Describe for me, meaning you want to ask the questions starting it with one of these things that I'm going to give you. Either describe for me, share with me, tell me about, or help me understand. So you want to start the questions with one of those ways of asking. So I would want to say, so let me give you an example of that. So I've just done with Caitlin of, we'll talk about your needs, wants, and expectations. Then we'll talk about what do I do that makes me different? What sets me apart from every other agent out there? After we've done that, then we're going to talk about the price and what is important in terms of a price for you on your home and getting the home sold. And then after that, after we've established that, then I'm just going to have you sign some paperwork and we'll get started on marketing your home. Okay,
Great.
she says, great. Then I'm gonna pop over here to the questions section and typically I'm gonna start it with some type of a question asking that starts with one of these. So I may say, so Caitlin, share with me, what ultimately has caused you to want to sell your home?
We're looking for a bigger home. We want to upgrade.
Okay, good. So now, so once she does that, then what I want to do is similar to what we talked about in the needs analysis class last week. We want to use those prompters as part of keeping them talking. So as part of the prompters, I want to say, what else? Or say more. Or keep going. Something like that, okay? So I'm gonna say, ultimately, what's made you decide to sell your home? She says, we've just decided we want to buy a bigger house or whatever, and I'm gonna say, great, what else? So ultimately, what I'm trying to do is get as much information as I can. So I'm gonna say, great, what else?
We'd like to cut down on commute time a little bit, be a little bit closer to work and have a bigger backyard.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna go, okay, great. So you want to, and then I'm gonna repeat back what she said. So you're gonna want to cut down on the commute, get a bigger backyard. Awesome. What else?
We want to make money. We want to
Okay.
make money on our home, use some of the equity for a down payment, be able to save some of that as well.
Okay, good. So notice I'm just gonna keep kind of digging and trying to, perfect. You want to get some more extra money out of the house for your down payment? That's awesome. What else do I need to know?
That we need, that the summer's crazy, so if we don't want a quick close, we need a little bit of a longer close. We don't want to be rushed out. We'd like to be able to take our time if possible.
Okay, so we don't want a quick, if I brought an offer that said they want to close next week, that could present a problem. it sounds
Yes.
like. Okay, good. So notice I'm just gonna be keep getting information. And then I'm gonna come back and then ask another question. And for me, I may say, okay, so Caitlin, describe for me your past experience with real estate agents, either good or bad. Just describe what that's looked like.
Last time, it's just very transactional, very, it was just business, which was fine. It got the job done, but there wasn't anything spectacular about it, which is again, probably why we're not using them again.
Okay. So perfect. So now I would probably say, okay, so it was very transactional, which was okay, but really,
Yeah.
really ultimately wasn't okay because you're not using them again. So what would you want to see? So I'll just do a follow-up question to this. So what would you want to see done differently this time? Now, notice though on this is where now, remember I said down here, this plan of action is, this is where they're going to now give me all the answers to the test. She's going to now start to tell me what I need to tell her in number 4, which is the plan of action. She's going to start to give me all the answers so that I can down here go, well, let me tell you how I do that.
So we'd like things to be a little bit more organized and structured and kept more in the loop, have a little bit more control as to when people are coming into our homes. We don't want to just last minute have to keep exiting the home, so we need time to prepare for that. We like, with COVID, we want to keep germs and stuff out of the house and be mindful of that. And
So now, as she's saying all this, I would be writing it down so that I can come back to it and go, okay, you mentioned this is how I'm, okay, sorry, keep going.
And we don't want any showings on Sunday. We'd like that one day reserved, no showings on Sunday. And that's really all we can think of right now is.
Okay. Perfect. So good. So now what I want to do is I just want to keep asking questions. So the types of things that I have found that I like to ask questions about in addition to what we've said. So I've asked her, like, ultimately, what are you wanting to accomplish? I've asked her to tell me about her past experience, good or bad. And I would, again, on this, I would drill down even further on some of them. So I may even say, well, so with your last agent that you had, what things did they do that you loved? And see what she says. And then I may say, what things did they do that you think they should have done differently? What would you want to see? I'm going to ask all these questions, recognizing she's going to give me all the answers to the test that I'm looking for as I do that. Make sense? So the other ones that I like to ask, if they don't bring up during so far what I've asked there, the other questions that I like to ask in addition to that is about time, which she already brought up the time piece. But if they hadn't, I'm going to ask, you know, hey, so share with me what's important about the timing of getting this property sold, okay? So I'm gonna ask about time. I'm gonna ask about price. So share with me how price will affect your decision on this. Now, by saying just price, what I've found is that could go one of two ways. She could interpret that I mean the price of the house, or she could interpret that I mean the commission. And I'm fine either way. I just want to know what, if I ask that question, how is price going to affect your decision? What I'm looking for is she more concerned about the commission, or is she concerned about the price of her house? And by asking the question that way, she's going to tell me which one is she's more worried about. And then the last one is I either put it as a fear or a / concern, okay? So after I've asked a bunch of questions, the last one that I'm going to ask of her is I'm going to say, so Caitlin, share with me what's your biggest concern about in getting the home sold. So I may say concern, or share with me your biggest fear that you have in getting the home sold, or help me understand what would keep you up at night, or what has kept you up at night about this process. What are you worried most about?
That we're not gonna sell.
Okay, great. So, and whatever it is that she says, so if she says that we're not gonna sell, then now I can know, okay, I gotta make sure to relieve that concern for her in this process. Does that make sense? Okay, you guys on Zoom, good, following me? You still awake?
Yep.
All right, good. Rebecca and Alex. Okay, good. All right, here we go. So any questions on the questions piece of this? Okay, good. So I'm gonna now, so just keep in mind, here's probably before we move on, let me say it this way. As an agent, you're going to tend to not want to ask enough of these. Just kind of know that as a general rule, you're gonna want to ask 2 or 3 of these and move on. Don't do that. Like, spend time asking questions, to dig down and asking, hey, tell me more about that. Share with me more about what you mean by that. Help me understand. Like, ultimately, the more time you can spend here in asking the questions, the more likely you're going to be able to create all of this to take place, so that when it comes time to talk about the pricing commission, they're going to be more likely to choose you and be ready. Does that make sense? So just before we move on, just know you're probably not going to spend enough time. Most agents don't spend enough time asking the questions. Okay. All right. Number 4. So 4 then is this plan of action here. So now here's the challenge on this plan of action, on me training you on it, at least. I don't know what they're going to tell you up here. I mean, I have some idea, but I don't know what they're going to say here. So for example, the story I told you about the home in California where the agent says, you know, tell me your biggest concern. She's like, I'm worried. They're going to put it on office tour. You're going to put it on board tour. They want to hold open houses. They're going to, like, I'm just picturing all these people walking through my house. Like, until that came up, I would have never thought to tell you that that's what their concern is. But just know, if you can discover what their motivating decision is going to be here, you can then present it to them down here. So the hardest part of me training you on this piece of it is I don't know what they're going to tell you up here to be able to say when you get here. So as far as me training you, I'll give you some ideas because I know some of the general stuff that typically is going to come up. But just recognize what you're wanting to do is you're taking notes as they talk about all this stuff. So when she was talking about, I don't want showings on Sunday, and we want to, I don't remember what else you were saying.
Like limit the show, we don't want last minute, like.
Yeah,
we want
last
more
minute
we want more
showings,
structure.
like all of that kind of stuff is now then down here is where I'm going to say, okay, here's what the things that you mentioned that you were worried about were last minute showings. And then from here, I'm going to just talk about, look, I'm going to do my very best, and here's what I'm going to do to make sure we don't have last minute showings. But I'm also probably going to say, so what would your feelings be though if we did get somebody that called that was, you know, hey, we were just driving by the neighborhood, we pulled out to see a different home. my buyers saw your house as we were driving through. Is there any way we could come through? What's gonna be your response? If I, you know, even though I'm gonna.
Most of the time we'll say yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna, but notice what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna first outline, here's what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna put on the MLS that, how much time did you want them to notice before showing?
2 hours.
Okay, so if that's what she says up here, I would have asked her these questions. Down here, I'm gonna say, okay, you mentioned you wanted 2-hour notice, so I'm gonna put in the MLS 2-hour notice before showings, and I'm gonna, you know, make sure that agents know that's what we expect. But then I'm also gonna say, but what are your feelings gonna be if we get somebody that last minute wants to come take a look at it and, you know, because that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so I want to just make sure that I'm dealing with it here of saying, how do you want me to handle it, Rob?
One thing I want to point out is because when you asked the question, what concerns, what are the things that that other agent didn't do? And you said, well, that's when you kind of brought up this, we don't want showings in the last minute. So hearing it, you could automatically assume that, oh, the perception is because they had these last minute showings, the agent didn't do their job. And so now when Russ is talking about this, I know I would also make an effort to find out, I'm curious, because last minute showings occurred, do you think that the agent didn't do their job by scheduling that way? Or was there something else about it? Because I want to hear, yeah, because the agent scheduled last minute showings, they didn't do their job. And now I want to separate the issue here by saying, okay, let me ask you a question. If I take in our plan of action, we put 2 hours showing, we do all these steps to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And that being said, someone's driving by the neighborhood and they see the sign and they're right there, they want to see it. Obviously, it's a last minute showing. Then I would ask you as the client, I'd be like, so if we did get last minute showings, would that be a concern to you? Meaning, would you think that I'm not doing my job if we got last minute showings? I want to hear it. I want you to say,
sure.
Well, no, because you've already taken these other steps. Because now I'm preparing you because I know that we may get last minute showings. And if you don't show your home, that hurts you versus meeting the 2 hour window. So part of my plan of action is planting a seed in your mind that now you know that if we get a last minute showing, I'm still doing my job. I didn't,
Right.
it's not the other way around.
Right.
Perfect, yeah. And so that's the importance of asking that, of what did the agent do or not do, or so that you can down here say, well, I'm gonna do all this stuff. However, we know
Right.
there are times when somebody's out with their agent and they see the house and go, oh my gosh, we love that one. What, can we go see that one? And they're gonna call and go, hey, is there any way we could possibly jump in right now? So yeah, I wanna make sure they know I've still done my job. All right, so here's what this plan of action piece looks like. How you wanna handle this, whatever it is you're going to do that they've talked about up here, how I'm gonna handle it down here is I wanna say something like this. And you don't have to say it exactly this way, but you wanna give because remember, what I'm trying to do is separate myself from the competition down here, okay? So I wanna say things like most agents, ... and then fill in the blank, okay? So I'm separating myself from the competition because I want to say, so let me give you an example. Let's use let's use this last minute showing thing. Let's say that Caitlin had told me, yeah, we had an agent or our last agent that we had or whatever, we had a time where we were just sitting there watching a movie as a family and all of a sudden somebody opened the door and came walking in and we were like, wow, we didn't even know, anybody was coming. So if they had said that up here as a concern about this last second showing type of stuff, I would deal with it like what we've already talked about, but I want to say it's something like this. Yeah, most agents will go just put a key box on the property, and some agents will even actually put just a contractor's key box on there, which the reason you don't want that is because on a contractor's key box, if the client watches the agent just punch in the numbers, they now know how to access your property. And we don't want that. Most agents will just throw a key box on there. But let me tell you how I work. So that's kind of the separation here is I'm gonna say, let me tell you how my key box works. Now, here's the interesting thing. Most of you probably are not even aware that your key box can do what I'm about to say that it'll do, so here's my point. Every agent out there that uses a board, the Supra key box, theirs will do what I'm about to say, but most are not aware of it. And so what I would do in that scenario with Caitlin is to help her is saying, hey, for us to make sure that we aren't getting these last second showings, somebody just showing up at your house, most agents will just put a key box on that any agent who is in good standing with the board could go and open it pretty much anytime they want it. But let me tell you how my key box works. My key box has what's called a call before showing code on there. Now, all of them have this, but most agents are not going to talk about it. So again, I'm going to separate myself from other agents by me saying, I've got this call before showing on my key boxes that I put on there. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to make sure that an agent can't just come walking into your house. They're not going to be aware of what the call before showing code is unless they contact me first. So how would you feel about knowing that the only way somebody's coming in is getting that code, which means they have to have talked to me first? How are you going to feel about that?
I feel great. Yeah, that makes me feel like it's going to be more controlled, less surprises, and we're not going to be, disrupted more than normal.
Perfect. So that's something you would want me to do
Yeah.
as part of getting your home listed
Yeah.
tonight. Perfect. So that's how we're going to do this so now let's say that we'll go back to that carpet thing where the lady had said, I'm worried about my carpet getting ruined because of open houses, board tour, office tour, all this stuff. I'm going to say, yeah, most agents, that's what they want to do. What most agents want to do is they want to put it on their office tour and the board tour because they want you as the seller to feel like, wow, look at all these people coming through my house. When in reality, they're coming through the house only because they have a house on the tour as well. And the only way you can get somebody to go to your house is you have to go to theirs. So the only reason they're coming around and looking at these, unfortunately, is because they want people to go look at their house, but it makes the seller feel good. But I don't work that way. I want to make sure we don't just have random people walking through your house. So I'm going to make sure not only that the people are interested, but they're approved first because we don't want them destroying your carpet. So that's how I'm going to be different. How does that make you feel about
A lot better.
protecting your
A
home?
lot better. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So notice that's what I'm going to be doing here. So let's go to another one. Let's say that they were worried about how it looks online or something. I may say to them, yeah, most agents. So let's say maybe it's an expired listing. They're like, yeah, the last agents, like they didn't even have the right pictures up of my house or something. I'm going to go, yeah, unfortunately, the way most agents work, most agents are going to just take their cell phone and walk around and take pictures of your house and then post it on the MLS. But that's not how I work. Let me tell you what I do because I want my listings to stand out. Now, Caitlin, have you gone? I know you guys were thinking about moving to this bigger house. Have you already been on the internet searching properties?
Oh, yeah.
Have you noticed the difference of the ones that have professional photography versus the ones that just use their cell phone?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and what happens when you come across one that just doesn't have very good clear photos? What do you do?
Don't really spend a lot of time on it.
That's right.
You kind of breeze through it and go on to the next.
That's right. And that's what most people do. So I don't want that to happen to your house. So I don't work the way most agents do in terms of just taking crappy photos. I get a professional photographer to come out there so that we can present it in the very best light possible. How do you feel about
Great.
doing that? Okay. So notice on this plan of action is just going to be most agents do this. This is what I do. Most agents do it this way. This is how I do it. And what I'm trying to do is create this value and separate myself. But here's the biggest thing. If you have found out what's important to them and gotten to what is their biggest concerns? What are the things that they're worried about? What do they expect? What do they want to see take place? Then down here, I can show them, this is how I do exactly what you want to see done. It should create this scenario where they're feeling the connection or the rapport. They should trust me. They should feel safe. They're seeing the value. They can see that I'm different than most agents out there. So now the next piece of this is to go to talking about the market and price. Okay. So, but remember what I said back here at the start. What did I say at the very beginning of this? There's two pieces to a listing presentation. And when do we talk about price?
After they choose you.
That's right. So guess what I've got to do now that we've done this plan of action? The next step is I got to figure out, have they chosen me? So let me show you what that looks like. So again, I'm going to draw a line across here. For me, this is how I like to do it. Is what I want to say to them is I need to find out, because the next thing, number 5 down here, is we're going to talk about then the price. Okay. But before we do that, I got to find out, have they chosen me? Because I don't want to talk price with them if they haven't chosen me yet. So here's how I like to do it here is, and I'll just write it down this way here for you guys. Scale of 1 to 10. So what I'm going to do is this. So I'm going to say, so Kate, is there anything else that we have not talked about that you feel like we should be discussing?
No, I feel really good about it.
You're good. Okay, so good. So before we talk about the price of your home and things, I just want to kind of get a feel of where I'm at with you. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're never going to list with me, and even if I paid you, to 10 being, yeah, no, we want you to be the one to help us get our home sold. Where are we at on that on a scale of 1 to 10?
You're at a 9.
I'm at a 9. Okay, cool. So what would have to happen for me to get over that edge to get to being a 10?
We need to know how much it's gonna cost us.
Okay, so if we can come to an agreement on that, you're good with listing your home?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's how I'm gonna handle this, is right here, I'm gonna do this check-in of asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? 1 being, it's never gonna happen, 10 being, yep, you're it. And anything they say less than 10, if she would have said 5, I would have said, 5? Wow, that's pretty good. I was a 3 last time. No, I'm gonna say, great. What would have to happen for me to get to 10? What have we not talked about to, and here's what you will find is I'm the type of person that for me, even if I think somebody did an awesome job, I probably would have said 9 as well.
Yeah.
I would say 8 or a 9. And in my mind, I'm always just like, well, I'm sure there's something else you could have done better. I don't know what, but so for me, but if somebody said to me, well, what would have to happen to get to the 10? I probably would be like, I don't know, nothing really, like whatever. So, but that's what I'm going to do here. So is I'm just checking in to see, have they chosen me? And if they said, which is not going to be uncommon, to, yeah, we're at a 9. If we can come to an agreement on a price and a commission, then we're good. Great, then let's do it, and we'll move into the price. If she said, well, we've got a couple of other agents that we're going to talk to, and then we'll make a decision. Okay. Well, have they chosen me at that point then?
No,
So do I want to talk price?
no,
No. So what am I going to do?
great. Do you say great? So when are you meeting with these agents?
Exactly right. That's exactly how I would handle it, is I would say, perfect. What, do you have appointments scheduled already with other agents? Yeah, we do. We've got somebody coming at 8 o'clock and whatever. Okay, great. Well, here's what I would like to do then. So for me, is I'm going to say, let me pause, actually. What I'm about to say, you may or may not like or agree with, but here's what I do know. If you leave this appointment without it, let's say it's a for sale by owner and expired listing. If you leave the appointment without getting a contract signed, you're probably not getting it signed. I mean, the chances go down. I shouldn't say you're not. I should say, but the chances are going down if you leave without getting it signed. So you've kind of got this dilemma of don't talk price, but if you leave, you're probably not going to get the listing. At least the chances go down, because here's what I do know. They're going to list with the last person they meet with.
Yep.
So for me, if I know, so here's the challenge with that. When I say they're going to list with the last person they meet with, typically what I mean by that is they may have 4 other appointments and I might be the first person there. And if they list with me, I'm the last person they're meeting with. That's what I mean by this, is that to some extent, if I can get them to list with me before I leave the property, I'm the last one they're meeting with, because they're probably not going to meet with people after they've already listed with me. So I want to be the last one. Now, when I say that, what I mean by it is I want to be the last one right then, if I can. But you're going to have some people that are like, nope, nope, nope. Everything you've said is great, but we're gonna meet with these other people. I promised them I would. I'm not. So here's how I'm gonna handle it then. Is for me, I like to say, if I can't get them to agree, then I'm gonna say, great, let's do this then. When are your appointments? They're gonna tell me when their appointments are. Whenever their last appointment is, I'm gonna say, great, I wanna finish our discussion and share with you. I wanna share with you some unique things that I do in terms of pricing. But what I don't wanna do, Caitlin, is give away all my trade secrets to you and then you go list with somebody else and use my trade secrets. So here's what I want to do. Now, the reason I'm saying it as trade secrets to them is I got to create some value to have them be curious enough to be willing to meet with me again. Because what I'm going to say is, great, meet with those other people then, but I want to come in right after the very last person. And Caitlin, I want you to promise me you won't list with anybody else till I've had the chance to share with you my trade secrets.
Okay.
Now, they may or may not, but I'm gonna at least try to do that, okay? So that way, I ultimately, I'm gonna say, you're not willing to sign with me right now because you promised these other people you'd meet with them. I want the same promise then. I wanna come back and finish. I want you to hear to see if anybody says anything like, I'll even say it as, that's awesome, meet with them. See if they're gonna give you the same kind of service and things that we've talked about. Now, here's why I'm okay with that. And I probably should have started this whole presentation with you guys understanding this. I worked with another manager. Let's hope we have a script book.
I have one.
Do you? Can I borrow it?
Mhm.
I worked with a manager that he one day said for a manager meeting, I want to teach all of you guys, the other managers, what I teach my agents in terms of a listing presentation. And then no lie, we were up in Heber, we were at the homestead up there. We had done this retreat thing. And we're sitting in there and we have, so picture you got these tables and they're in like a rectangle. And we're all sitting around this rectangle tables. And he says, okay, I'm going to teach you guys my listing presentation. And here's what he taught his agents. So my point in telling you this is typically what you're competing with when you go on a listing presentation. Is he sat down and he had a flip chart thing like this, a book binder. He opened it up and he said, our company has been around since 1906. And then he started to talk about the company. And then he said, we're part of the Cardis Relocation Network. What that means to you as a seller is we're blah, 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 blah. And no lie, for 2 hours we sat there as he went through, and then this page, and then let me tell you about this page, and then this page. Now, I don't know if you've ever had somebody do a presentation to you that way, but what do you want to do?
Tell them to stop.
Yeah, like I'm not even paying attention. Can you like,
Just
we'll
leave
list
me
with
the
you just so that you'll shut up. Like, right? So that's one way. The other way that people will do a listing presentation is this. This is what most people's listing presentation is. Caitlin, let me tell you how great I am. I am the #1 agent in my cubicle. Yep, I got an award. I gave it to myself for being the #1 agent in that cubicle. Like they want to come and show up and tell you, this is why I'm so wonderful. Now, contrast that to what we've done. What have I said about me in this presentation? Other than let me tell you what I do, but up until this point, it's all been about them and finding out what's important to them. And so just kind of keep in mind, you will separate yourself from the competition if just by doing this and asking the questions. Because most agents are going to go in and either have that type of a presentation. Let me tell you about my company. Let me tell you about this. And we're going to put your home on 800 websites. And we're going to do this. And when the truth is, here's what you're going to find. Most of the time up here, they don't say anything about how many websites you're putting it on. They don't care about we don't do this anymore, but I used to always say, they don't care about what magazine you're going to put their house in. What they care about is what?
That the home trust and safety.
Yeah,
That they feel, yeah.
Do they trust giving this responsibility to me? And yeah, am I going to be able to get it done? I mean, they're worried of, is my house going to sell? Am I going to get the money that we need to go do what we want to do? They're not so concerned about how many websites and how many, pictures you're taking. I mean, there's
That's what
some,
everyone does. I mean,
right?
in reality, that's just what it is now.
That's right. So ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so now let's say that we've gotten to where Caitlin said, yes, we can come to an agreement on price. We're good. We'll do it. Okay, so then the next thing we're gonna do here then is I'm gonna go through price, but the first thing I want to do is talk about the macro, meaning I want to talk about what's going on in the market today. So I'm going to start this piece with them of talking about, let me tell you what's going on in the market today. Now, if somebody asked you that today and you were not you are an agent, they were not an agent, and they said to you, so what's going on in the market today? How would you answer that question?
It's a seller's market.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means there's more buyers than there are sellers. And so, you know, a lot of homes are going over listing price, you're getting top dollar, you know, our inventory is low. So there's just not a lot of pick from, and homes are selling. That's what they're doing.
Okay, good. So that's what you're gonna do. It's under this price piece. You're gonna start with the big picture. Let me tell you what's going on in the market today. Inventory is really low. Now, if it were me today saying it, here's what I would say is, I'm not sure what you have heard out in the news and those type of things. We went from being a really strong seller's market to an incredible, fascinating, like something I've never seen in 26 years of my career in real estate, where homes were flying off the shelves. We're getting 50 offers. We're getting way over list price. People are doing all this stuff. In the last little bit, we're actually starting to see some inventory start to increase. We're not seeing as many multiple offers. Like, I'm going to kind of paint the picture of, like, because in their mind, they're probably thinking, well, I'm going to put it on, it's going to sell for 100,000 over, which you even actually just said, you just put one under contract for
At list price.
So I want them to know that that's what's going on. So I'm just going to kind of talk, here's what's going on in the market. Okay. Now, from there, then we're going to talk about pricing. And so I'm going to go from, like, here's kind of the big picture to then talking about, let's talk about, you know, how pricing works. And so, like I say, a couple months ago, I would have been like, it almost doesn't matter what price you put it on, you're going to get way over list price. Today, I would be saying, hey, the inventory is starting to increase. We're going to have to be a little more conscious on what we're doing on price. And don't be surprised if we don't get offers that are over list price anymore. But I'm also then going to talk to them about how pricing works. And so what I mean by that is I'm going to say to them, let me share with you some, and remember I said to you, my trade secrets. Well, this is really more of an Everest trade secret, but I'm going to be saying, let me tell you what we want to do in terms of pricing. We want to keep an eye on what's going on with your home. And typically we teach it as every 3 weeks. Now, the market we have been through, for a while there, I probably would have said 1 week later, we need to be evaluating this. Now, here's the other thing. As the price of the home goes up, as you get into an upper end property, you might extend this as well. Meaning, like, if I had a $15 million listing today, I probably am not going to say to them, hey, every 3 weeks we need to evaluate your price. I might say every 3 months we're going to want to evaluate your price. But what I'm going to be telling them is, as a general rule, every 3 weeks, we want to be having a conversation about your price. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the number of showings we've had and the number of offers we've gotten. So I'm going to just tell them, hey, part of what we're going to want to do in terms of pricing is we're going to come up with a price that we're going to land on for your home. But every 3 weeks, you and I are going to have a conversation about the number of showings we've had and the number of offers that we've had. If we go 3 weeks and we've had no showings and we've had no offers, we need to reduce the price somewhere between 7 and 10%. What we know is if we're getting no showings and no offers on your home after 3 weeks, we are at least 7 to 10% overpriced. So we need to reduce that much if we want to get it sold. If after 3 weeks we're getting some showings, and I would define some as 1 to 3 a week, but no offers, we need to reduce the price between 5 and 7%. Now, let me tell you guys a quick story on that I did a couple of years ago. I had the opportunity to list a cabin up Big Cottonwood Canyon. And without getting into all the detail of it, because it's a long story, but it was a brother and a sister. She used the property weekly, this cabin. She'd go up every weekend and spend the weekend up there. He would use it maybe once or twice a year. And it was their parents' cabin built when they, 60 years ago, this thing was built. Parents died, left it to this son and the daughter. So they're on as joint tenants. She has him sign a quitclaim deed where changing it from joint tenants to tenants in common, and to where she had, if I remember right, 2/3 of the interest and he had 1/3. But the way she presented it to him was, hey, I'm changing my name. I can't remember if she got married or her husband died or some reason she was wanting to change her name. So she presented it to her brothers. Hey, I just need to change my name on the title. I need you to sign this. He didn't read it. He just signed it. And then she came back the next summer and said, hey, I want to sell the property now. And FYI, I get 2/3, you get 1/3 of the property. So turning this whole thing where I was ended up dealing with his attorney and her attorney, like it was a mess. But because it was such a mess, when we got to this part of this, of talking about it, I said, she wanted to list with somebody else, a different agent. He wanted to list with me. So it was now this like, who's going to win kind of a thing. Well, by the way, I sat down and took her through this. I went through every bit of this with her. And when we got down here to the pricing piece, actually, let me back up. Up here on this scale of 1 to 10, when I asked her, hey, where are we at? She actually said to me, I just sold a property in Sugar House and I wish I had talked to you because I would have listed with you. So I was like, holy cow, I'm getting this listing for sure. Well, then she went back and talked to her attorney, and all of a sudden she kind of came back. Well, I still want my other person. But what they finally landed on was, and my point of this story is, they were going to list it with me for 3 months. If I couldn't get it sold in the 3 months, then they were going to list with her agent. Well, knowing she didn't really want me to list it, she wanted this other person. She, of course, I told him I thought the property, this cabin, was probably worth $385, $390. She wanted to list it for $425. Of course she does, because then 3 months goes by and it doesn't sell. So I put together in the contract, and I put into the contract this. So I did an addendum that said to our listing agreement, every 3 weeks we'll reduce the price. If we've had no showings and no offers, we'll reduce it. I just said 7%. If we've had 1 to 3 showings in a week, but no offers, we'll reduce it 5%. So I get a call from her attorney. Have you heard this story before? I loved this. So going off of your attorney story yesterday, I get a call from her attorney and he goes, hey, I was looking over the contract. We are not going to do that. And I said, why? And he said, well, because you're saying every 3 weeks what happens if we never get an offer? Eventually, like, it's what, $20 to buy the property? And I was like, well, that's never going to happen. But if it did, then that's probably what the house is worth. Well, we're not going to do that. Here's what I'm proposing instead. On this particular date, if it hasn't sold by this date, we'll reduce the price to this. If it hasn't sold by this date by this price, by this date, we'll reduce the price to that. And then if it doesn't sell by this date, we'll reduce the price to this. And then after that, we can renegotiate if we need to. Well, he had already gotten it down below what I thought the property would sell for. And so I was like, perfect, let's do it. So it had in the contract, on this date, if the property's not sold, the price will go to this. On this date, if the property's not sold, it will go to this. I was like, that's even better, because I don't have to come back and get any price changes. We could just, so we put the property on the market, $425, get an offer for $425. And I was like, no way, like, this is not really worth this. But during due diligence, they came back, hey, we found out all these problems. We're not going to pay that. We'll give you this price for it. We just said, no, took it off the market. Well, it had been now 2 weeks. Well, the contract said that I get to reduce the price. So she calls me one day. Hey, I know the contract says we get to reduce the price, but can we give it 1 more week first? And I said, yeah, that's fine. We'll give it 1 more week first. So
Extend this to 30 days.
yeah. So we didn't do that, but I just said, that's fine, because I knew it was going to sell. And as soon as we reduced the price, so it didn't sell the next week. So the next week we reduced the price, and I think we went from $425 to like $399 or something. As soon as it hit the $399, we got an offer and the property sold. So here's the point though, is I want to share with them, like, when I get to this pricing piece, here's what's going on in the market. But here's what you need to know is every property is different, meaning, and I'm sure you've got these same stories, Rob, but I remember a property out in Magna that I went to list that I remember saying to the lady, they have sold everything in your neighborhood is either 95 or 99. If they were not in great condition, they sold for 95. If they were great condition, they would sell for 99. And she goes, I want to list it for 107. And I'm like, even if we get an offer for 107, it's not going to appraise because the appraiser is going to try to pull a comp out of your neighborhood and there's nothing to justify it. Nope. I had a dream last night that it's going to sell for 107. And I was like, all right, put it on. Next day, full price offer. It appraised. And I was just like, she was like, told you. I'm like, all right, well, whatever. Now, I've had the flip side too, where I've gone out on a property that was down in Sugar House. I went in there and they said, we want to list it for this particular price. And I was like, we could probably get more. No, I think this is the price we want to list it at. And I was like, all right. I mean, all of my comps said it should have sold for 20,000 more than what they wanted to list it at. We put it on the market, tons of showings, no offers, tons of showings, no offers. And I was like scratching my head because I'm like, this is a killer price. Well, what I failed to notice every time I went to the property is right across the street was a power substation. And so, yes, it was a great price, but then everybody would pull up and go, I don't want that. And like the house had windows about like this, like, so your view was awesome of a power substation. And so buyers would come and be like, yeah, it's great, but I don't want to look at the power substation, so I'm not interested. So the point being, one of the greatest things I ever learned from an agent that was in my first office that I worked in was you can never outguess the market. Like you might think you have done all your CMA, everything perfectly, but just because one house is identical to it in a different street, this particular street, the view, the neighbor, the whatever might change it. And so for me, I always just present to them of like, here's what's going on in the market, but here's the thing. A CMA, which is the next thing that we're going to do, is we're going to then talk about their price on their house, but that's our best guess, is all it really is. It's a starting point. And then I just tell them is my job is to be an interpreter of the market. The market speaks in this cryptid language, and I'm here to interpret that for you as the buyer or the seller. I'm here to interpret it. And my interpretation looks like this. The way the market speaks to you is if you're getting no showings and no offers, that's the market's way of saying you're way overpriced. If you're getting some but no offers, you're a little overpriced. Essentially, what I want them to understand is if we get to within 4% of what the price should be, it will sell. So that's kind of the piece of this in terms of the pricing. And then from there, we'll pull out the CMA and say, okay, here's why this house is better than yours. Here's why it's worse. Here's why it's the same. And then I'm going to ultimately say to them, so based on what we have seen on this market analysis, what price do you feel like we should start the listing of your home? Now, the truth is they already have a number in mind because they've already made decisions and based on what they've heard and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just asking them, where do you want to start it at? What's the price? Now, for me, here's the thing. Going back to that cabin, if they'll agree to our pricing strategy, I'll list a property at any price. I really don't care. Whatever price they, as long as, like I said, I'm not afraid to put it in an addendum saying this is what we're going to do with the price. And if they'll agree to that, hey, if you want to try that higher price. Now, the truth is your first 3 weeks on the market are the very best. That's when you're going to get top dollar for the property. So yes, meaning another quick, where are we at time-wise? I can tell you another quick story. 2008, 2009, what was going on in the market, 2009?
Reverse.
Yeah, so I went out, so a home that I listed, so that where I grew up, my next door neighbor, my mom ended up moving, and then the neighbors ended up later on moving. So, but I had grown up my whole life next to these people. Well, their mom dies, then their dad dies. The daughter that was my age calls me and says, hey, dad's passed away. We need to sell his house in South Jordan. Will you come out and help us? This is 2009. I go out there and I look at it and I tell them, let me tell you what's going on in the market today. There's a flood of, I mean, this was the reverse of what we are right now. Tons of properties on the market. And I said, we got to be aggressive on this. She says, well, my dad had an appraisal done shortly before he died and it came in at 410. So we were kind of hoping we could list it at 410. And I said, probably when he had it appraised, that was what it was worth. Today, I said, I think you're probably worth 385. She said, well, can we at least try it at 400? Yeah, we can try it. But I ran through this with her. She said, okay. So we put it on the market at 400. A month goes by. I go out and meet with her again at the house and I say, okay, hasn't sold. Let me show you what's gone on in the last month. I brought new comps, showed her the properties are it's probably worth 365 now. After I had told her 385. A month later, it's probably worth 365. Guess what she wants to reduce the price to? 385.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, but all we're doing is chasing the market. So here's my point. Typically, your first 3 weeks, and then after that, the price is going to kind of do this, and then over time, it'll eventually go back up. You're typically going to get the top dollar in that first 3 week period. Okay. And I tried to explain it to her, but she wanted to list it here. Well, then 3 weeks went by. She reduced the price to here, but now the market was there. So a month goes by. I go back out there, sit down with her, and I say, okay, in the last month, homes that have sold are now 350. What do you want to do? She goes, well, let's reduce it to 365. And I said, you realize what we're doing? Like, we're chasing the market. And the longer we keep chasing it, the worse it's going to get. And so I told her, I said, based on projections and what we've seen happening, in a month from now, if we go to 365, I'm going to be here telling you it's worth 335. What do you want to do? She said, let's list it at 350. So we finally got down in here to 350 and got an offer and ended up selling it for like 347.5 or something like that. But the point is, I guess, back to on this, your best chance is, even though I'm telling you guys, I don't care what the price is, I'll list it at whatever price they want, if they'll follow our pricing strategy. That's true. I'm good with that. But I also understand that during that first 3 weeks is your best time. And so I will use that story with them of, hey, what we don't want to do is chase the market because it's just going to cost you money.
I mean, we all had similar stories during that
Yeah.
time. What I used at that time. So imagine you're in San Francisco and you had a ball.
A ball?
A ball.
Okay.
And you drop the ball at the top of the hill. How do you get that ball to stop?
Oh, that's good.
You gotta get in front of it.
You got to get in front of the ball. Or if you never get in front of it, eventually once it gets to the very bottom, and it'll stop on its own. But you got to get in front of it. That's exactly what,
That's good.
if you're running after the ball, you're never going to catch it. But somehow you got to get in front of the ball and let the ball come to you.
Yeah.
And so
That's good. I
that
like
was
that.
the analogy you used for it.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I like that. Okay, we good on price? All right, and Caitlin left, so I guess I didn't get the listing. All right, last.
She decided no.
Because you didn't say the price.
I know, I wouldn't give her the price. All right, so the last thing then is close. So the last part of our listing presentation is the close. Now, hopefully you have noticed as we've gone through this, we were kind of trial closing all the way along, you know, even back here to the game plan is, hey, if what we say makes sense and you're comfortable with everything we've talked about, I'll just ask you to sign some paperwork, okay? And they said, okay. And over here, we were saying little things all along the way about closing. And then right here, I said, where are we at in terms of you choosing me to list your home on a scale of 1 to 10? And she said 9. And I said, okay, what would it take to be a 10? And she said, well, if we can come to an agreement on price. So now we've gone through here and gotten through to the price, and we've agreed on the price. Now all it's a matter of saying is, okay, so it sounds like we've agreed on price, right? Caitlin would have said yes. And I'd say, great. So did you want it to hit the market on Friday, or would Saturday be better for you? So I'm just going to ask them, hey, when did you want it to hit the market, on this day or that day? You want it to go on Monday, or do you want it to hit on Friday? And then if they say, well, Friday, probably. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get all the paperwork filled out and signed, and we'll have it hit the market. I'll get the photographer out here, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. You can see, hopefully, that if you've done this right, the close should be easy. The close is just a matter of, okay, so what, did you want it to start tomorrow, or do you want to have it hit on Monday? Make sense? All right, what other questions? here's the question I have for you guys on Zoom. Now, I know a couple of you have, I know what your answer is. What do I need to do to get the rest of you guys to show up in person to class? I mean, Alex, I know is in Brigham City, so I'll give him that. I think Rebecca's in St. George. I'll give her that. What about the rest of you? What do I gotta do to get you to come in person?
Oh, I'm actually in Salt Lake.
Oh, then we'll get in here. What are you not
I
doing?
know.
The rest aren't paying attention.
I can go Tuesdays, but Thursdays I have a meeting at the Centerville office with my team.
All right. I gave you an out, Alex, because I said you live.
And next week I'm in St. George, sorry.
The rest aren't gonna answer, so, okay. Well, thank you for being here. If you guys didn't put your name in the chat box, make sure you do it so that I can show that you were here. But thanks for being here. Go out and get some listings. Right now, they're money. You get a listing, you get a paycheck right away. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Russ.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome. See you guys.
See ya.